how pathetic the U.S. case is. They have to rely on lies.
That was Stella Assange, the wife of Julian Assange, the imprisoned journalist whose appeal against being extradited to the United States was being heard last week.
And then the prosecutors say, don't question these lies because that would offend our ally. And they are persecuting the journalist who exposed them.
Russell Dobular is a journalist and a co-host of the program Do Dissidents. He was in London for the hearing before the British court. We spoke with him via Zoom on Wednesday. First of all, Russell, thanks for joining us. To me, what's most interesting about it, because I know when you actually go and get involved in these things in person, you learn things that you didn't know. What did you come back with that you didn't go over to England with about Julian Assange?
Obviously, I got to coordinate and interact with the people who are supporting the effort to get him free. And you can tell a lot about a person by the people around them. And from Stella on to everybody else, everyone was so warm and just basically kind, decent people, really moral, principled group of people, and that extended to the broader crowd. I think you look at a lot of causes that are more what I would call virtue signaling kind of causes that you get a lot of approval for. That attracts a very different kind of person. That's the kind of person I usually don't respond to well. So you go to something like this protest to free one of the most important, if not the most important journalists of our time. And it's something that the entire establishment is against you. It's something they're never going to put on the side of a Starbucks cup. It's something Amazon is never going to tweet out about approvingly. And the kind of people who show up to that, that's the real deal. That's the real left. That's the actual left. Now, unfortunately, in that regard, it's not nearly as large as it should have been. I don't want to give the impression it was small, but this is arguably, it's definitely the most important freedom of the press case since Daniel Ellsberg.
Yeah.
And you could argue it may be the most important freedom of press case of the last 100 years. Everyone in the world who could get there should have been there. Like, to me, that should have been hundreds of thousands of people.
This isn't hyperbole either. The condition that exists now is one where every human being on the planet, almost, certainly 90% of the human beings on the planet, are engaged deeply with media. And so the question is then, since someone is speaking to everyone almost all of the time, who exactly has control of that microphone? Under that condition, it matters a lot more if there's some public access to the microphone than if there's maybe a dozen people that know how to read in your town or reading each other's newspapers. So in terms of its importance to us, it's deeply important now.
Well, this is really where I think the Julian Assange case is a flashpoint in what is ultimately the battle of our times. The battle of our moment is the fight between an increasingly out of touch and disconnected global elite class and the popular will of a population that they clearly believe from their statements and their actions should shut up and let their betters decide what's good for them. And the loss of control over the conversation that the internet has engendered really is a big part of what you're seeing with elites trying to slowly, it's very much the frog in the pot of boiling water. It used to be a given among even liberals, and I don't use that term with affection, but even among liberals, the basic idea that freedom of speech was sacrosanct was just a given, right? These are the people who lined up around the corner to see good night and good luck when it came out, right? Very aware of McCarthyism and these speech rights. And gradually they've been persuaded to become the new McCarthyites. They've been persuaded that, well, the internet changes things and maybe freedom of speech isn't so great. And you're seeing the liberal class being drawn into making a case against free speech by the elites that they tend to slavishly follow. And the reason this has become such a flashpoint for elites is through outlets like the Times, through the barrier to entry of media and the means of production and the capital you needed to have any kind of a large platform. They were able to gatekeep. Now, that was somewhat moderated by what Matt Taibbi describes so well in his book, Hate Inc., where this standard of objectivity, objective journalism, now we remember it as an idealistic principle, and for a lot of those reporters, it certainly was. But it wasn't for the owners of the media. It was a business strategy so that you could have the widest possible audience. You're not alienating anybody. But now they can no longer gatekeep the information. Now, back then, because they had this objective standard, the news was relatively good compared to what it is now. Fox News and the whole Murdoch empire, they proved that there was actually more money to be made feeding red meat to a fanatically devoted ideological base than there was in trying to please both sides. And that destroyed the entire premise of news. That just what you get today, I always compare it to, it is what grape drink is to grape juice. That's what the news media is today to what it once was, but they always served a gatekeeping function. Right. As Noam Chomsky demonstrated in Manufacturing Consent, that's not post that collapse of media. That's when it was at its best. And he demonstrated the way war and foreign policy were reported. There was always a lot of State Department regurgitation of their talking points. Now, I mean, look what's happening with Gaza. They immediately lost control of the narrative. They're not able to limit what people see. You have videos being shared. I've mentioned this on our show on Due Dissidence. When Fahrenheit 9/11 came out, people lined up to see that. It was the Bush election, the re-election campaign. It was a very charged moment, and everybody showed up to see that movie. And when they showed the footage of maimed Iraqis, it was shocking because you hadn't seen it. We had the internet, but not in any form of what it is today. And nobody had seen it. The media didn't show that to you. Now, immediately with Gaza, the images of the Palestinian civilians, they couldn't control it. And that's what a lot of this is about. And Julian Assange is kind of the nexus point of that argument. Because if someone like Assange, if journalists like Assange can release their secrets that way, and they have a means of distribution that the elites do not control, that is extremely dangerous to their authority and power. So all of these strains, all of these threads are coming together in the Assange case. And that's what's so important about it, because if Assange goes down, we're all in trouble.
Yeah, that's right. We're all muzzled, basically.
Yes, they can come for any of us.
Russell, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you.
For KPFK, I'm Don DeBar.